Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. And our guest today is Hans Manke, who's already appeared before. He's one of the world's leading experts on Russiagate and, of course, on UkraineGate. And it's in fact an aspect of UkraineGate that we're going to talk about today. For many of us, UkraineGate started in 2018 when former Vice President Joe Biden was addressing the Council on Foreign Relations, and in his boastful way, he described the pressure that he applied against the Kiev government to fire a prosecutor. He said that if you don't fire this prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, we will withhold $1 billion, and I'm just going to get the first plane out of here. And sure enough, within a few hours, Biden boasted, the Kiev government caved in. At the time when this came out, the common interpretation was what great guys the Obama administration were. They were fighting corruption with fury and passion. They put pressure on the Kiev government, and the Kiev government came through. Subsequently, we learned that this character, Viktor Shokin, was investigating this Ukrainian gas company, Burisma, on whose board sat the vice president's son. And so therefore, this apparent fight against corruption seemed not quite so above board. Now, we had many developments and so on, but the defense of Biden has been twofold. The first claim is that at the time that he insisted on the firing of Shokin, there was no investigation of Burisma. To use the term everyone applies, it was dormant. The investigation was dormant. And the second defense that is applied is that everybody else, the EU, the IMF, an old Uncle Tom Cobley and all, were all insisting that Shokin be fired. So there was nothing at all special about this dismissal. Now, these arguments are not very convincing. Now, you, Hans, have followed this case very closely. So can you enlighten us a little more, particularly about these two lines of defense that Biden's champions have put forward?
Sure. And we've actually had a new development in the case. So obviously, the Shokin case is an old case, and during the impeachment, we've really been through that, and especially the second defense, the part about, everyone wanted him fired, that's already been debunked, because you can go into the archives and you can say, well, who actually wanted him fired? And there is nothing there. The EU wanted him fired. So you go to the EU press releases and news reports, there's just nothing there. They had one report after he was fired saying, great anti-corruption or whatever, after he was fired, means nothing. So there's just nothing there. So I think that part's sort of been dealt with already. But we have some new information on the first part, and this is really, really interesting. So this is the part where, Shokin was fired because he wasn't doing enough to go after Burisma. And this is one of these classic, accuse the others of what you are guilty of situations. And there's actually a smoking gun email on exactly that. And it's pretty strong when you, I'll call it up in a moment and sort of tell you what it says. So remember last week when this whole news broke about Hunter Biden's laptop, there was the smoking gun email in the New York Post was this guy Projarski, who was the de facto head of Burisma, who had gone to see Biden. And of course, that puts the lie in Biden's sort of defense, where he had always said, I never knew anything. I never met anyone. I knew nothing. Well, he met the guy. So this was in April of 2015. So the same guy and I think this is a much bigger smoking gun email, a few months later, the same guy emails Hunter Biden and complains that Hunter Biden isn't doing enough to make Burisma's problems go away. So it's almost as if Hunter Biden, took the millions, overpromised, underdelivered, and this guy's really frustrated. And this email is really something. So I think I'll just put it in the comments later on so everyone can just have a look at it themselves. So this is November 2nd. This is Pozharskyi, the Burisma executive. So he emails Hunter Biden and he says, look, I need deliverables. His words, not mine. He says that he wants high-ranking U.S. officials to lean on the Ukrainians to make these problems go away. And very importantly, he says he wants the cases against Burisma to go away. So this is November 2015. The Burisma guy asks Hunter Biden to make these problems go away. So of course there must be a case if the Burisma guy wants the case to go away. And it was not even a month later, early December, when Biden then travels to Ukraine and asks for this prosecutor to be fired. I mean, it couldn't be any more clear than that. And I'm really happy we now have that email, because we sort of knew the story, but this email is really something.
Well, it's very interesting, and it's something that I remember very, very distinctly, is that when there was, after the coup, and these American and Western carpetbaggers flooded into Ukraine looking for a payday, and I guess the vice president's son was one of them, or he was a surrogate for someone or others, is that they had a fundamental misunderstanding on how politics runs in Ukraine, and it's run by oligarchs. Okay, and so basically, what wittingly or unwittingly, I would probably stress unwittingly, they walked into an oligarch war that is very, very dangerous, high stakes. It's very much a winner take all, and the U.S. government was stupidly, naively going in there to be some kind of referee. Well, it doesn't work that way in Ukraine. And of course, where are the deliverables? It basically means, get whoever is in Kiev under control, because, well, we're part of your realm right now, and that's part of the deal, which of course is not very easy to do. There are very powerful oligarchs in Ukraine for a reason. Okay, they're crafty, they're very smart, and there's a long history of very, very dirty politics, even violence. And so I'm sorry you put the vice president's son in charge of taking care of these people. I mean, that's kind of like bringing in a substitute teacher into a bar and asking him, to make sure that all the boys, behave themselves and don't drink and get into fights, because that's exactly what it is. Like in a oligarch war in a country that's run by oligarchs.
No, that's right. And the thing that they didn't sort of account on either, I suppose, is that it wasn't as easy as they thought it would be. So Biden goes in December for exactly the reason you mentioned. There's so many different factions and things going on. So Biden goes in December and says, you got to get rid of this guy Shokin. And Poroshenko, the president of Ukraine, goes, no. So I guess they weren't expecting that. So then...
I just interrupt briefly. Now, he says no because he and Shokin were, I think, quite close friends. Isn't that it? I think that there was some personal connection between the two of them, wasn't it? I don't know. That's how I remember reading that there was some personal link.
Something like that too. Okay. Yes.
No, that's right. In fact, Shokin had already retired. He was brought back in to sort of help clean things up. So that's one of the other ironies in this thing. He didn't need to be there. He wasn't some guy who was sort of a career guy on the take or whatever. He was already retired. He came back to try and help out. I guess it would have been something along the lines, Poroshenko telling Biden, look, this guy's not the problem. And Poroshenko would have been right, because if you look at Shokin's history, I mean, he's had accusations thrown at him and so on, but nothing, I mean, he wasn't caught with his hands in the kitty or whatever. There's nothing like that. I mean, it's the usual sort of office politics. There's a guy called Casco, his deputy, who obviously wants to kind of get rid of him because he probably wants his job. And there's this stuff going on. There's a diamond prosecutors issue where some prosecutors in Ukraine were caught with diamonds at home and they'd sort of extorted that from someone. But, this wasn't Shokin. And the thing I think that people miss is that, there's a whole bunch of corrupt people. And so Shokin is parachuted in out of retirement to try and clean things up. He's not going to go and just sort of fire everyone or whatever. It doesn't work that way. You have to pick your battles. There's competing interests, there's power struggles. The guy had barely been there for a few months when all this happened, and suddenly, he was supposed to be removed. So I think Poroshenko just told Biden, look, this guy's not the problem. And then they had to kind of rethink how they're going to get rid of this guy on the Biden side. And this is where Eric Ciaramella set up the meeting in Washington in January, which is right after the Biden had gone there and not succeeded. And then Eric Ciaramella invites Shokin's deputy to come to Washington for this meeting. Now, we don't know what happened at this meeting. We know that Ciaramella was there. We know that Shokin's deputy was there. I have a feeling that that is where they concocted this plan about the $1 billion, where that's going to be the pressure that they're going to use. And soon after, there was real reason to sort of really ratchet it up, because right after this meeting in early February, Shokin then seized all of Burisma's properties, and houses, cars, everything was seized. So, I mean, this idea that there was nothing being done against Burisma is ludicrous. On top of that, the Latvians, who are not corrupt, were not sort of on that side of things, made a request of Ukraine to cooperate in a corruption probe against Burisma and Hunter Biden. He's named in the Latvian document. So this is in February. And obviously this is like alarm bells. Biden has to do something. So on February 18th is when he gets on the phone. This was the leaked phone call. And talks to Poroshenko and says, this guy's got to go. And this is the phone call where Poroshenko goes, well, that problem we talked about, okay, we'll take care of it, something along those lines. So highly incriminating itself. I think those are still on YouTube, those phone calls. So Biden clearly got rid of this guy.
Yes. Just to back up now, you said the Latvians specifically mentioned Hunter Biden?
Yes, they do.
Right?
They said, we have an investigation against Hunter Biden and Burisma. And they made a formal request of the Ukrainians to send them documentation. And I assume it's because some money was funneled through a Latvian bank. That's how they got involved in this. And then sorry.
Go ahead.
The other part that's sort of not really talked about much is the replacement. So, okay, Shokin's gone, this supposedly terribly corrupt guy or whatever. What happens? Who is this? Who's Biden's chosen successor? Who's the new Shokin? Well, it's this guy called Lutsenko. What happens immediately as soon as Shokin's gone? Lutsenko is installed. Well, Blue Star, who are these Democrat fixers who are working together with Hunter Biden, fly out to Ukraine and tell this guy what to do. And what does this guy do? He makes all the problems go away. All the Burisma cases are basically not only put on hold, they're put to an end. It's all done. Right before the handover to Trump in January of 2017, Biden actually flies out. This is right at the time when all these things are wrapped up. It's done, no more investigations. And Zlochevsky, the boss of Burisma, flies back because, he has nothing to fear anymore. So, Hunter Biden delivered. It's that part with Lutsenko, the replacement, that's equally as interesting as getting rid of Shokin, because getting rid of Shokin is only half of the story. You also need to make sure that the new guy does whatever you need him to do, and he did exactly what they needed him to do.
It sounds like, if I'm not mistaken, a quid pro quo.
It does, yes. I always sort of ask myself, just think of this as, and replace the name Biden with Pence, okay? Pence goes to some country, Azerbaijan, and replaces the prosecutor there. Just that on its own, without anything else. It's like, what on earth is a US vice president doing replacing a prosecutor in some faraway country? That in itself. Then you add in that, the prosecutor was investigating a company who was paying millions of dollars to Pence's son. Now add into that Pence then got rid of the prosecutor. Add into that Pence got him replaced with the prosecutor who made all the problems go away. I mean, imagine it was Pence. You'd have hair on fire all over the place, media wall to wall.
You don't even have to. It's a perfect example, and it makes it very crystal clear what you're saying. But we have a real life example. As Don Jr. took a meeting in Trump Tower, okay, for a complete nothing burger. He was lured there under false pretenses. Talked about something completely different. It was about adoptions and others.
Bill Browder. This
Browder,
woman,
right?
Yeah, want to talk about Bill Browder.
Well, that made it into the Mueller report. Okay, right. that had a life of its own for how many weeks? Okay, it still does to some people. One of the things that's really interesting is that Burisma has a long history of corruption. I mean, they were UK regulators that just put them on a blacklist. They do not deal with these people at all. This predates all of it. This predates even the coup. Okay, I mean, this company was toxic, and everybody knew it. Okay. And it was used very much as a political weapon again, because the prosecutor general office is a state office. It was used as a cudgel again. Whoever could control it, it was a cudgel to go after your enemies, your oligarchic enemies, and that's why you have this, and it's never explained in the West, is that you have this complete oligarchic capture of the state. Okay, and most people in the West can't even understand what that really means. Okay, you have a president and you have a parliament and you have justices, but they're not independent entities. Okay, they are captured entities. Okay, and that's why when Hunter's sitting on the board of Burisma, there the chairman of Burisma is just like, well, snap your fingers. I mean, you got it. Let's do what's going on. Okay, and that's the naivete that the Biden orbit had going into Ukraine, and of course. There's not when again I've been to Ukraine many times. The place isn't subtle. Okay, it's not a subtle place. Okay, and if you're expecting some kind of subtleties when you have an American as an interlocutor, you're grossly mistaken. Okay, because it's about, to use your words or the word that you quoted, it's about deliverables. Okay, if you don't do it, well, there could be problems. Okay, I mean, let's just say what it really is. This is like a mafia operation. Okay, and that's how, and it's the mentality. Okay, quid pro quo, and if you don't, there are consequences.
Exactly, and that email, and I'll put it in the comments, is exactly that.
Yes. So let's just think about this again, going back to the timeline, which is so fascinating. So we have Biden makes the first phone call to Poroshenko to get Shokin fired. You said about November 2015?
In December, he actually traveled there. He was in Ukraine.
And so Poroshenko says no. And then there is this meeting. And who attends this meeting? This is Charamella. Did Biden attend this meeting?
No, he's not on the list. Biden's not on the list, but the deputy prosecutor Casco, he's at that meeting, and this is odd in and of itself, because if the U.S. government invites a delegation from another country, but they cut out the main guy, I mean that's just sort of just from a etiquette point of view, you can't do that. So this was obviously part of sending the message. We're not going to deal with that prosecutor. We're going to bring his deputy.
Do you know if any embassy staff or ambassador was there? American.
We don't know. The thing is, we don't know much about the meeting. I think it's because Ciaramella was there and his role, and that's sort of clouded in mystery. And we certainly need to know a lot more about what happened there, because that meeting, this is mid-January 2016, seems to be the origins of the quid pro quo.
Yeah, because you were talking about etiquette here. I mean, if the vice president of the United States is in Kiev, it's etiquette to have the ambassador or head of mission, or the economics attaché or commerce attaché. That's etiquette here. I mean, if they weren't present, that is odd in itself. Okay, why wouldn't they be there?
Yeah. And Masha Jovanovic, at what point does she emerge? When does she become ambassador to Ukraine?
After this, during this time, there's a guy called Pyatt.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And even he's sort of
trouble. Okay, just sorry.
So he was replaced later, or I don't know, maybe it's just a normal process, but he actually sent out tweets, and you can still look at his tweet history. And he actually seems quite happy with the situation around the turn of the year 2015 into 2016. So he says much progress made, everything looking much better, and so on his tweets. So again, that doesn't really jive with Biden going over there and saying, this is all terrible, you need to get rid of Shokin. And this is his own ambassador who's saying this. And Shokin had done a few other things. He had opened a separate arm within the prosecutor's office for anti-corruption. So there was a number of things going on. But as I said earlier, there's nothing you can sort of point to and say, oh my goodness, this guy took 25 million, he has to go or whatever. I mean, it's all kind of run-of-the-mill stuff. Sure, maybe there was some corruption, maybe there wasn't, but I mean, it's sort of to rise to the level of vice president. I think this is the main question that people just need to always come back to. This is sort of the bottom line. Would that really rise to the level of vice president of the United States? Just some prosecutor in some country? Right. Obviously not, unless it involved his son, and we have the email to prove it.
And we have to keep stressing here, business as usual is corruption in Ukraine. Okay, let's be very clear about that. Okay, and you can't use the excuse "I didn't know." Okay, that's not a viable excuse here. I mean, they were watching very closely regime change. If you're watching forced regime change, you know how the system works. Okay, so you can't use that as an out that I didn't know. And you're absolutely right. Having a sitting vice president, I mean, basically going in to be a fixer. I mean, you do remember the pictures of him sitting at the in the president's seat, and he had the government around him. Okay, and I think that's maybe the forces that were aligned around Burisma wanted that they saw the symbolism. They wanted to see the power at the same time. Okay,
right. No, I think that's right. But so now, if we just continue with the timeline, so March 2016, he's gone. Shokin's gone. Is he replaced right away with Lutsenko, immediate, or is there anything else?
There's a bit of a gap. So formally, Lutsenko comes on board in May, but that might have just been when the paperwork was sorted out. I'm not sure about that. So there's about a 1 month gap. Whether he was on in some sort of acting role or not, I'm not sure. But what we do know is that Hunter Biden's people, Blue Star, flew over right away. So he didn't do it himself. He had this company, these Democrat fixes, Blue Star, well, they met Lutsenko, and clearly they told him what was expected, and then it just took another 5-6 months from there.
Do you have a date when they? Do you have a date when they flew over to meet Lutsenko?
No, but we could look that up. So that there's a record of that.
Okay. So then May, that's May 27, and then January 2017, the whole thing is wrapped up. They
Everything's wrapped up. All the investigations are gone. Zlochevsky, the main guy who had been in exile, he's able to come back, reclaim all his property. It's all good. Mm-hmm. And this is before Trump comes in. It's very, very important.
Right.
And yeah. Biden's actually over there, which I always found odd. You have the transition. Trump is going to come in, and Biden has nothing better to do than hang around in Ukraine.
Well, I guess we know now.
We do, yeah.
Yeah. So when was Biden's last trip to Ukraine? When was it?
Like January 17th, something like that. Like literally just a few days before the handover.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fascinating. So, do
we have any real concrete evidence about Yovanovitch's role in all of this as ambassador? Because when I was watching the impeachment hearings, my impression was that she, in the way I watched it, she was less than truthful. I had the impression that a good part of her time actually was working and watching and controlling certain portfolios, let's put it that way, in Ukraine. Because when she was asked about it, she was very evasive about it. I mean, it seems to me if it was the vice president or the vice president of the United States, or even the former vice president of the United States, because we do have these consultants involved. I mean, it's a very large circle here. I got the impression that she was almost her assignment in a way to look after these affairs. Do you think that's an exaggerated point of view to have?
Not from my point of view, but unlike what we have now with Biden, we don't have that smoking gun. I mean, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence in relation to Ivanovic. There is as well, by the way, in relation to Newland, who was working with the State Department, who was also kind of involved with all these things. So one of the things with her, when you look at the impeachment and her testimony there, so she was asked about, you know, what role did you have in getting this prosecutor fired and all that kind of stuff. So she came up, her main excuse was like, oh, he had to be fired because of this diamond prosecutors thing that we already talked about. But if you look at her testimony, it's all upside down. She gets all her dates wrong. It's all totally messed up. So the diamond prosecutors were arrested and these diamonds were seized back in July of 2015. And she has it all much later, which is why that's when they had to act and get rid of the prosecutor and so on. So there's a lot of these characters that, you know, really need to be looked into. I mean, someone needs to just look at the whole thing. But I mean, right now, for our purposes, the Biden thing is really, really bad. And we actually have the evidence in the form of this email. As we said, you have the top guy, Burisma, asking, and again, that's not my word, it's his word, to Hunter Biden, where are the deliverables? Not happy, you know, give me the deliverables.
And Yovanovitch and others were talking about how they were fighting for democracy and anti-corruption. But given what we know, and I think we're going to learn a lot more, it's actually the other way around. It's upside down. I mean, if there's going to be corruption, then we're going to channel what corruption there is. That's my humble opinion. But that's what it looks like.
That's it, because during her deposition in UkraineGate, she was asked, I think specifically, I can't remember by which Republican congressman, what specific corruption cases were you pressing the Kiev government to pursue? And she couldn't name one.
Exactly.
Just name one, and she failed to name a single one. So yeah, that kind of gives you an idea. But wasn't there also an issue that the Obama administration was briefing her? Yeah, hey, you know, during the your confirmation hearings, the topic of Burisma is going to come up, and you are to say this and this. Well, is that
That's
something?
right, and I think she said she couldn't remember or words to that effect, but there's a record of that as well. So the Burisma issue was well known. And Peter already mentioned this, not only during that time, but it goes way back. I mean, this was well known. Suddenly the son of the vice president is involved. So a lot of people talking about it. Yes, she was warned about it. She was told what to say about it. I mean, these were well-known things. I'm just glad now that we have the email. I just hope that we can draw the attention of more people to it. Because you couldn't have it any more clear than the guy who's paying Hunter Biden millions of dollars asking Biden for deliverables. I mean, it just doesn't get any more clear than that. And he even spells out what the deliverables are. I mean, the email is sort of, he complains that nothing concrete has been done, but then he says, if this is just done to sort of, you know, so keep things quiet, I think he says, if we need to keep this safe, then he understands. But he wants to make sure that everyone here on this email knows what's really going on. I mean, he actually says that. And then at the end, he says, you know, and what's really going on is we need to make these cases go away. Those are the deliverables. So it just is, you don't even have to read between the lines. It's that bad.
And a sitting vice president pops on a plane in the waning days of the Obama administration, would seem, stress seem, to kind of tie a bow on the whole thing. Mission accomplished.
Sure does, yeah.
So let me just ask you, as we finish, if you were President Trump and you have to somehow raise this issue, how would you raise it? What would be the most effective way of raising it? He's only got 2 weeks left, so he's got to raise it in the most effective way possible.
I think it's got to be at the debates. He has to raise it. The media is not going to talk about it.
What specifically should he raise?
Right. First of all, he has to prepare. Just saying Biden's corrupt is not enough. He needs to know some of these facts. I think the lie is a good one, just from maybe not from a perspective of you know, a legal analysis or whatever, but just from a persuasion perspective, because you've got Biden out there 100 times over saying, I knew nothing about what my son did, no involvement whatsoever. And we have that email, which has him meeting not only the Burisma guy, Pozharsky, but now we've also got him meeting the Kazakh guy. I mean, what was he doing? Was he just saying, oh, these are my son's friends or whatever? Of course he knew what was going on. So, I mean, I would really focus on Biden lying about these contacts. And then just ask him at the debate, why did you lie? Because there's no question he lied. And then he's going to come up with some excuse as being debunked or whatever. And then Trump, and you can set up a website or whatever to point people to, or in whatever way say, no, this really happened. You had contact with these people. You lied about it. You said you didn't. So why? And you'll really force home that point.
You know, Hans, something that George and I have been discussing off and on for the last couple of days is that as we go into the last days of the election, obviously there are people like ourselves asking to what degree it might sway the outcome or and all that. And you know what? Because we're living in this moment now, it's logical to think about that. But as George and I have spoken earlier, is that even after the election, this doesn't go away. I mean, it's there and it has to be dealt with, okay? And considering the fiery partisanship we have now, I think there's going to be more and more people that will be interested in exactly what happened here, irrespective of the outcome in the election. And if Biden wins, I mean, it's kind of a Pyrrhic victory because it's going to go with him as he goes into history, okay, as it were.
He's not going to survive. That I'm absolutely sure of. It's just a question of whether he gets through to November 3rd. After November 3rd, he's gone. I mean, it might go into April, May, something like that, but by next summer, he's gone either way. There's no way he can survive this.
Hans, unless you have amazing abilities of thought control. George and I said almost exactly the same thing an hour ago on a different video.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think it's done. I think he'll be confronted by his DOJ and say, look, this is so damning. You can't possibly survive this. Your best bet is just to resign, claim ill health, and then the whole case will just be buried.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and we thought the fireworks were going to end on the November 3rd. Okay, silly us.
All right.
Hans, thank you. Great stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hans. Yeah, that was really fast. Yes. All right. Remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.